Awesome. We're on. We're on. You've got your doctorate, so I'm going to call you doctor. In the beginning.
Really? I'm going to take you down very quickly.
Yeah, good.
I was always going to be a finance guy. So my undergrad degree was economics and finance with a minor in quant, like stats and maths and numbers. Numbers was my game.
You've been teaching venture capitalists early on.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Most venture capitalists have stumbled into that space, I imagine, rather than being taught.
Yeah, I guess so. And within the VC space, often it's not pure finance people that find their way into VC. It's usually people that have an engineering background or a sales background that understand business.
We rolled the ping pong table out of the road. Is it?
Yeah.
Is that getting the road? Is that a distraction?
Well, the good thing about the ping pong table, it breaks out into two group tables, right? And we know that just getting in and just hitting a ball clears mind, enables spread of things, and that's where sparks of ideas come from. Our desired outcomes are human capital. We want to build better entrepreneurs, and we're less concerned with the viability of the business that's running through.
You are amidst the mental revolution, where we make the entrepreneurship journey less lonely. I'm your host, Chris Hogan, and here with me I have Dr. Baden Uren. Baden is a passionate educator and engaging speaker, and is a champion of innovation. Baden is Director of Bond University's Business Commercialization Centre, Head of Entrepreneurship at Bond, and co-founder of the Bond University Accelerator, and recently co-organiser of the Gold Coast Startup Weekend for Health. Outside the uni campus, Baden is also co-founder of agribusiness startup Dittrich Agriculture and co-founder of Pet Wellness Centres right here on the Gold Coast. Welcome to Mental Revolution.
Thanks, Chris.
What a mouthful.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were saying it, not me.
That's quite a title. How did you come to be such a big part of the Bond ecosystem?
By accident, really. Looking back, like in my early days, I was a finance guy. I was always going to be a finance guy. So my undergrad degree was economics and finance with a minor in quant, like stats and maths and numbers. Numbers was my game. And I did a semester abroad during my undergrad degree to the US and decided I needed to stay there for a period of time. And trying to get a visa to actually work over there is difficult when you're a 21-year-old and you don't really have many experiences in life or work experience. So I started up my first business at age 21 in order to stay, to get a visa. It was an E2 treaty trader visa. So I started into the entrepreneurship space early by accident because I wanted to stay in the States for a while. Ran that business for 5 years, then decided I needed to come back and actually get back on track. So I came to Bond in late 99, started my MBA and my Masters of Finance in year 2000 in order to get back on track. You have these visions as to the way life's meant to be. And so I graduated out of those degrees and went and I started working in finance. I was working for a small private investment bank, and we had a managed investment fund that we're investing into mainly property development, but we're also investing into capitalising startups. The most salient memory I have is this man, John Gillett, who was, he used to be a sort of head of, in the senior areas of Moran Healthcare in aged care, and we funded him to go out and buy about 5 nursing homes and 4 retirement villages over in WA. So at early stages of my finance career, I was getting into deals and doing deals, and that got me into a short little stint up at QIC in their private equity area when QIC first decided to onboard private equity as an investment class for the Queensland State Employees superannuation funds. And I spent a a short little time there before I started my PhD here at Bond, and ended up sort of finding out that I actually really loved teaching. I got into the classroom. I still remember my first ever teaching gig was horrible, like awful, but as time goes, I really found that I had a passion for being in the classroom and for engaging students in the learning journey and watching them grow. It's a really awesome feeling.
And what year was that?
So I started, my first teaching gig was 2004. They asked me again, even though it was enormously messed up, my memory of it is anyway. They asked me to teach it again in 2005. And then the dean of the business school back in then, George Earle, actually had a $1.5 million ARC, Australian Research Council linkage grant, which was funded by industry to look into the provision of aged care, how we're going to provide housing for our ageing population. And so they funded me into a PhD spot to look at some finance aspects to it. So I won't bore you with the details of my thesis, but it was looking at the pricing of housing, of retirement housing, and the effect of proximity to medical facilities. So that's kind of where I came, and then while I was here, I was fortunate enough to sort of come under the wing of an awesome academic, Justin Craig, who's now a full professor at Kellogg over in Northwestern University over in Chicago. He's just an amazing man, and it was kind of because of him that I went into the entrepreneurship space rather than staying in finance. So early days, I was teaching the venture capital and private equity class, and then I just started to learn more and become sort of immersive in the broader entrepreneurship space.
So you've been teaching venture capitalists early on.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Most venture capitalists have stumbled into that space, I imagine, rather than being taught.
Yeah, I guess so. And within the VC space, often it's not pure finance people that find their way into VC. It's usually people that have an engineering background or a sales background that understand business. Because in the VC world, sure, there's structuring, the way in which to structure a deal and what drives value in a company. They're finance skills, but a lot of the time you're dealing with people and ideas and how they'll actually transfer into a business that will make money, right? Which is understanding the customer pains and what you're offering and how that route to market happens. And so often in VC firms, it's not pure finance people that are the drivers. You might have some analysts, but the people that are making the decisions have a broad background. They might have come from a sales background or been in marketing or operations or something.
Lee, on our last podcast, recommended a video, Something Ventured. Have you seen that documentary? Yeah, it's awesome.
It's wonderful.
I wanted to become a VC.
And look at Lee's background, right? A salesman from way back. Yeah.
So it would seem that from many of the co-founder, co-organizer sort of titles that you have, that your charismatic nature attracts good partners. So tell me more about Dittrich and how you came to be co-founder of your business.
So Dittrich Ag is a great little story. It's a great story as to why universities are still relevant in today's society. There's all this, university's dead. What's the role of a university? How are they going to be moved forward? Digital disruption, MOOCs, Udacity, Coursera, B School. Lisa Messenger has just created like the collective. What's it called? The Entrepreneurship Collective with Torrens University down at Adelaide, which is delivering diploma education and bachelor's degrees in the entrepreneurship space. So the traditional university role in education, where does it sit? And I think Dittrich Ag is a classic example of why universities will sustain as a significant institution in the startup space, because it brings people together. They're a creative, collaborative, engaging space where people, once they step onto campus, especially here at Bond, we have a beautiful campus and a community that sits around it. Once you come on campus, you're here and your mind's open. And that environment is really hard to create you look around, typically the really vibrant ecosystems around the world where startups are thriving, one component of that ecosystem is a significant university presence. And it's not, we're teaching you how to be entrepreneurs, No. It's all the soft stuff that sits around and the community that builds and the way in which people engage while they're in campus. That's the important part. And that's how Dittrich Ag came about. Cale Dittrich, who's 5th generation wheat farmer out of the Mallee in Victoria. He'll hate me for saying it, but his dad is really well known. And if you're in AFL and you're over the age of 40, you'll remember Carl Dittrich, classic ruckman from the 70s and early 80s.
Getting some nods from the cameraman.
Yeah, big shock of blonde hair. People will remember Carl Dittrich. So Cale is from that family, and but importantly, 5th generation wheat farmer, and as a youngster had grown up on farm and knew the struggles of how especially wheat farmers, but crop farmers generally enter the market, and the influence of corporatisation and how dominant entities such as the bulk handlers that sit in the middle of the value chain that buy from the farm and deliver to the port, and where all the value tends to go. And interestingly, he had worked for GrainCorp, one of the big bulk handlers, and he'd seen firsthand the shenanigans that go on either side of that transaction between the growers and the bulk handlers.
Yeah.
And he was in my entrepreneurship innovation class that I teach to the MBAs. There's another little side story. In our MBA program, we teach innovative strategy. So one of their core foundation subjects is, all right, typical operations of a firm, role of innovation. It's a central tenet of an organisation. It needs to be delivered across the organisation. So it's strategy.
Yeah.
So he was in that class, and we were. Our classes tend to be pretty vibrant, and I still remember, I reckon at least once a week, more, he was in my office just like, he's one of these ideas guys, and he was like, I don't know what the solution is, but here is the problem. I know the problem. Us farmers, we try and make it so that the bulk handlers can't see the fact that we're shimmying things around. A bit of background, for wheat, for farmers, they get paid on protein level. Different levels of protein get different payments because they're used for different end uses. White bread versus noodles versus cupcakes, versus they all require different type of flour, different type of grain that goes in. And so 12.5% protein level is paid at, say, at the moment, current rates are about $245 a metric tonne, whereas if you're down to 11% protein, it's $220 a tonne. So you get paid different based on protein level, and he knew that the growers were putting good quality stuff on top of the truck and putting some lower quality stuff underneath in order to try and get the full $245 a tonne, and he also knew that bulk handlers were doing all kinds of shenanigans to show that it was really down at the 11%, not at the 12.5, all of this stuff that was sitting around. And he's like, I have to try and figure out how we can solve this. It's such a big problem. Because for the farmer, that difference, if you think about it, $20 on a $200 and $220 thing, that's 10% gross margin. That's massive. And on-farm margins are squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And I'd seen an early Kickstarter campaign for this little device, and I forget the name of it, started with S, but you pointed it at an apple and it told you the chemical breakdown of the apple. It said, it's certain percent protein, certain percent sugars, certain percent carbohydrates, And I was like, well, there was this little thing, maybe that might be right. So we started looking at possibilities of how we could use some kind of handheld spectrometer in order to measure the quality of grain. Hadn't been done. At the moment, you can buy, at the time, they were $20,000, a big machine, which is a spectrometer that the bulk handlers have, but the farmers tend not to. And that measures the protein level. So the bulk handlers put a big probe into the truck, they take a sample, they chuck it into the machine, and they tell the farmer what the protein level is. So that's how much you'll pay. You can see the potential for shenanigans, right? So we thought, let's put a little handheld spectrometer in the hands of a farmer, and they can say, no, this is 13%, right? Here it is. And so we engaged a former principal research scientist from Cyro, who'd been made redundant through their big restructure that had happened. Roger Meader, he's an unbelievable guy. Just next level smarts with respect to data and analytics. He'd been doing measurement of protein in cow dung for some big beef farmers so they could maximise and make more efficient their feeding cycle.
Yeah, right.
We're putting so much protein in, how much is coming out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I thought, well, if he can do that, surely he can do wheat. So we engaged him. He did his magic. We created a little device that was a handheld spectrometer. We tested it on wheat. It worked. We built up a quick little clunky little app that sat in the background that captured the data and put it in the hands of 9 farmers down in the Mallee, early people that Cale knew, early customers to see what it was like. In order to fund that, another one of my students, Shiny Sue, she's a Chinese student, she was in that same class, and she represents a fairly significant Chinese family office. They have a bunch of family-owned businesses, and she was like, this is a really good idea. I'll put some money in behind this. So here's the story for universities. Like, it was because we were in that room and Cale had the idea and he's like, I've got the problem, and connected in with me, who had some knowledge of some other stuff, and then Shiny comes in and voila, Dittrich Ag exists. So we got it in the hands of 9 farmers. 5 of them didn't really use it. Of the 4 that did, only 1 actually used that spectrometer. The rest of them just loved the fact that we'd actually built out that little clunky little app. In order to make sense of the data, we needed to show what quality and quantity they had in what silos. So they typically harvest, they chuck it in silos, and then at the moment, farmers kind of know in their head what they've got where, or best, they're in exercise books. But we'd built out this electronic, record management system, and that's what they were using.
All right.
Yeah, so now the current version of it has focused more on that, and
isn't it funny? You took it, you made it probably more complicated than it needed to be in some respects, but
yeah,
you found a solution for farmers that, regardless. Yeah.
Regardless, and that's a really big thing that we try and teach our students here at Bond is a business plan, and this is a classic Steve Blank quote. A business plan never survives first touch point with the customer. It never, right? It's never the same until you get in front of customers, and then they start telling you what is really needed.
That's right.
And if you find the right customer, they then work with you to try and solve the problem they're trying to solve. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So, the role of university sounds like it's changed in the last 10 years?
Yeah. Specifically in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like if I go back, I've been teaching here for a bit over a decade now, 12 years now, and even the in-class experience. Like right now, we're in a classroom. I'd probably venture to say, for the people that are watching this, this doesn't look like a classroom, and yet it is. It's where we run our business model generation subjects. So now in our Bachelor of Business, we've completely redesigned the foundation subjects that sit in our Bachelor of Business, and there's a 2-semester long set of subjects called Business Model Generation and Business Model Execution, where students go through 4 weeks of creativity. These are business students, and we get them in and they do, how do you come up with good ideas? Ideation, how does that come? So we run them through creativity exercises, and they come up and they pitch an idea, and we run them in this classroom. And the classroom has been designed to break down the barriers, the traditional barrier between a professor and the student. I'm the one with the knowledge.
There's no stage.
There's no podium, no stage.
We rolled the ping pong table out of the road.
Yeah.
Is that getting the road? Is that a distraction?
Well, the good thing about the ping pong table, it breaks out into 2 group work tables, right? And we know that the fact that just getting in and just hitting a ball clears mind, enables spread of thing, and that's where sparks of ideas come from, because you clear your mind as to where you were, different paradigm, new way of thinking. It's funny, my colleagues say, ping pong table, what are you doing? It's designed, right? It's designed as a learning tool. Sounds a bit funny, right? But it is. It's designed as a learning tool.
Any excuse to get it in the room, eh?
Any excuse to get it in the room,
No.
Even the colour of these couches.
Good.
We're sitting and we're relaxed, but we're active and engaged because it's red. So a lot of work has been put into the design of this room to be a learning environment, a creative learning environment. Did you bring any other
faculties in to help with that at all?
Yeah, so we engaged with our IT department, with with our what's they called? They're called the Faculty of Society and Design now, but our creativity and the journalists and the advertising people. Yeah. To the best, and I also travelled overseas. I went to Stanford and went to their D School and saw what was happening at D School. I went to the Cambridge Innovation Centre in Boston. I went to Northeastern's Idea Lab, and I took these best practices of things that what worked. Like the red couches are basically paying homage to Stanford's D School. Okay. Theatre 2 at D School, their central pieces are 4 red couches. And they're always, one of the designs of their places has got a whole this flexible learning environment, but the constant is the 4 couches that sit in the middle. And after every session, everything gets put away. Those 4 couches are put back in the middle. So for me, when designing this room, a central tenet needed to be the 4 red couches.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. a little paying homage to Stanford. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I digress away from the uni for a second and get on to your other project, which is pet wellness centres here on the coast. How did that come about?
My partner Kath, it's her business. She's amazing. She as an early late 20s, mid 20s woman. She'd come back from being overseas and doing the travel around the world thing, and she got herself into the very beginnings of a quite a significant Gold Coast based business now, which has just recently rebranded themselves to Maven Dental, but they were known as Dental Partners back in those days. And she hustled her way into a PA's job for Mike Timoney, the guy who was creating that business, and converted herself into being the general manager of operations for a company that went from 0 to 75 dental clinics, $100 million turnover revenue, 1,000 staff. She built that business, or she was a significant component of building that business over 7 years. Wow. And then she exited out of there and was basically poached by one of her service providers. So there's this big multinational company called Henry Schein. They're a Fortune 500, I think they're like number 120 or something on the Fortune 500. And they have a whole bunch of different businesses. One was, and where she got in touch with them was they provide the practice management software for dental practices. Yeah. And they've been on the negotiating table on opposite sides, them trying to get dental partners to use it. And Kath having none of it, didn't have quite what she was looking for. Yeah. But they said, come and run our vet practice management software business, which is called Software of Excellence and ProVet. So she went out and she was a general manager for Australia and New Zealand for one of Henry Schein's subsidiary that was doing vet practice management software. And while she was there, she saw how the vet industry basically was about 7 to 10 years behind where dental was. The professionalisation of the vet practice as a client-facing organisation. It was still typically the clinician driving the business, and she was going around and she was advising a whole bunch of vet clinics on how to improve their practices, and we were like, what are you doing? We could do this ourselves. And so opportunity abounded that we decided to step that out, capitalise ourselves up, and start what we believe is a great little niche in the pet wellness space. Yeah. So our little tagline is more than just a vet, and our plan is to make the vet experience really, really customer friendly and customer focused, providing a whole wellness plan for an animal that looks at the way in its nutrition, its flea and worming, and its normal vet practices. If it's arthritic, we've got like an aqua treadmill and we're bringing acupuncture in and some other things that people can choose if they wish. Yeah. We've got a whole range of different options. As an example, like we've sourced this locally produced, magnificent, ethically produced dog food, where the founder of that, Diana, she's amazing. She's created this dog food which comes from ethically sourced, like organic fruit and vegetables, ethically produced livestock and eggs and all that kind of stuff and she's produced this dog food. So people that are that interested can choose that if they wish, can choose it if they wish. Yeah. So we packaged all that up, annual plan, monthly payments, everything free delivered to your door. So if you've got a dog at home, let's call him Rufus. In 6 months' time, you'll get a little envelope in the mail from Pet Wellness Centre saying, here's Rufus's worming tablets, make sure to do it this week. Yeah. Making it easy as possible for customers who want to take care of their pets, yeah, to increase their health, their wellness, their longevity. Yeah,
yeah, great. Is it pretty low tech at the moment? Do you plan to add technology to it to make it?
Yeah, so at the moment our wellness plans are set out on an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah. Ultimately we'll have a little app that customers will be able to connect with, yeah, and say, here's Rufus, yeah, weight, breed, that kind of stuff, and it'll tailor things. Yeah. But at the moment,
one step at a time.
One step at a time. We have a warehouse at the moment that's having walls put up. That's the stage that we're at.
And where are we at?
So we're on 87 Lower West Burleigh Road.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
Just down in the awesome little space where warehouse number 5 is, a great little startup community place, yeah, literally we've just done demo out of an existing warehouse that was a church, which kind of cool. And just as of what's today? Today's Tuesday. So yesterday, walls were going up. Yeah. Plumbing went in last week. We're early stage.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
Yeah,
awesome. So it's safe to say that you're an entrepreneur, and you said that was accidental. But you've been given a job title to prove that you're an entrepreneur, head of entrepreneurship here at Bond. But my question is around how are students tackling entrepreneurship versus going out and getting a job these days? Are you finding that they're battling with that, or is that an easy transition for them now?
It's still not an easy transition, but some recent research out of Canada showed going into university, 62% of university students had the concept that they might want to start their own business. This is a massive shift in...
That was this year?
Yeah, just last year, 2015 data. It's a massive shift in the expectations of graduate outcomes for students, right? Wow. Traditionally, you came to university to learn a profession or a skill. You did an accounting degree, or you went to school to become a lawyer, or to become a doctor, or you went to TAFE to do a trade, or a range of different tertiary educators to get yourself ready for an outcome that was traditionally a job. Yeah. But millennials are different these days. Yeah. They have views as to how they can make a difference to the world, and you're more likely to make a difference by being in charge of the entity that is doing it. Yeah, and so more and more we see people saying, I think I'd like to do it. The question becomes how. And one of our roles as educators is to demystify the startup process. So to show that actually registering a company is a relatively inexpensive exercise. There are things you need to consider. What entity, what structure, right? And we put people in touch with that, and we show the process, how it can be done.
Correct.
How do you start a business? One of the things we try and teach our students is that you don't need to be everything to everybody. Lots of very significant startups start with an initial product to an initial little segment in a market, and they do that really well. And then it spreads. Yeah, so demystifying the process of the startup is one of the roles of education now, right? Rather than skill delivery, it's aptitude delivery, it's capacity building. So one of my mantras well, there are two entities that I have here at Bond. One is the purely academic, which is the head of entrepreneurship role. So that's design and oversight of delivery and assurance of learning for entrepreneurship education in classroom. And then there's the Bond Business Commercialisation Centre that I'm the director of. And it has two main goals. One is to improve the graduate outcomes of our students, either as innovative thought leaders within businesses or as entrepreneurs themselves. And second is to engage with community and improve the local ecosystem, the Australian ecosystem, by increasing engagement, disseminating best knowledge, right? And so we've got this role and trying to redefine the classroom experience. like what I was talking about, business model generation.
Yep.
You're coming in and learning in environments such as this, and feeling free to think up an idea and then test the idea and then validate it and go out and do one-on-one customer interviews, not surveys. Survey monkey is a dirty word in our little environment. Right? It's go out and talk one-on-one to people who you think are going to buy from you and what you can learn from that. So we have changes in the design and the delivery of our subjects, where entrepreneurship education and experiential learning are two key drivers. And you go back to how this comes about, there was a report done by Northeastern University in 2014 that did a big survey of C-suite executives over in the US and said, what are you looking for out of your graduates? And they said, well, we're trying to drive innovation and we're looking for the 2 E's. 91% of these C-suite executives, they went out with this massive survey, said the 2 E's, entrepreneurship education, experiential learning. That's what we want. We want graduates who have entrepreneurial thinking so that they can look at opportunity and drive opportunity, and we want them to have tested it and failed and learned while at school so that we don't have to do that once we get them. So we're trying to do that as much as we can here on campus. We even tell them we want you to fail. Fail here in this environment, this safe little environment where it doesn't matter, and you can learn from it. Mick Lebinskas here down Sydney, he's famous for coining the term FLEARN, or at least that's the first place I heard it, was from him. Hashtag FLEARN. We just put that out everywhere here, right? Fail and learn from it. Fail and learn from it. And what better place to do that than at university, right?
Absolutely. Ideally, while you're still living under mum and dad's roof, and
so where things are safe, right? Where the hit can be acceptable.
Absolutely. Great. So in December 2015, the government came out with their ideas boom. And it sounds like, last year that report came out, about 60% of students want to be entrepreneurs. It certainly feels like there is, some momentum built already, that we are fully amidst an ideas boom. I'm sitting in the coalface with an agency, hearing more and more ideas come in. What's your thoughts? Are we? How is the Gold Coast faring as becoming the home of entrepreneurship? So there's multiple aspects to talk about there. You're right, the Ideas Boom launched in December. Just predating that by a couple of months in October, Professor Ian Chubb, the former Chief Scientist of Australia, in association with Spike Innovation, Colin Kinner, based out of Brisbane, created a report that was called, I can't remember. Never mind.
But the little tagline was, a role for universities.
Right.
So it was, let's just make up the title. It was, how do we drive innovation in Australia? That's not what it was, but it was something like that. And it was a role for universities. And it went through and it documented best practice internationally, and said it was that universities played a critical role in driving the innovative capability of our economy. And it really resonated with me because earlier that year I'd travelled on holidays to Sri Lanka, and I was travelling as Kath and I tend to do. We go to the non-traditional little spots, but everywhere we went we saw these little kids who were dressed beautifully in white, and their hair was done, and they were bright-faced and chirpy and looked well-fed, and there's abject poverty in Sri Lanka everywhere, and yet there was this section of society that just looked vibrant, and we were like, what's going on? And we spoke to one of the locals, and they're like, oh, the government provides free education at primary level. Of all the things that the Sri Lankan government could do, they injected a whole bunch of resources into providing a really good start for their kids.
Awesome.
Free education, free uniforms, food at school, all this stuff. And when I saw Ian Chubb's report, I thought, and it goes back to what Sir Ken Robinson was saying. If you haven't, just Google Sir Ken Robinson, you'll get my message. Universities, high schools, primary schools have a privileged position in society because everyone goes through them, and less as you go up. Not everybody goes to university, right? but education is a spot where we can make a structural change to society. We can. And we can do it through curriculum.
Yeah.
And we can change the capacity of the general Australian to be more innovative and more through education. And so for me, I've been on it for a while, but that was like the kick in the pants, or the call to action to say, this is a national priority, is to drive entrepreneurship education through our education system. And we can do it by showing best practice here at Bond. This is how we're doing it. And do the best that we can, and then support as best we can all of the other entities that are trying to do it at different levels of education. DICE and Club Kidpreneur and Startup Apprentice and Startup Creative and all of these little programs that are targeting little areas, support them as much as we possibly can through. We don't have much money to do it. I don't really have a budget to do in terms of financial support, but be a judge, be a mentor, talk them up, champion their activities such that we can make a structural change to the Australian economy through educating our people.
Awesome. That's awesome. So tell me about the Bond Business Accelerator then. That's pretty new to this ecosystem here.
Yeah, well, actually, no.
No?
So yes and no. So the accelerator is one of the ways that we're doing that here at Bond. Our entrepreneurship education has 3 pillars. It has classroom, it has campus, and it has community. And the Bond Business Accelerator started off as a campus activity. It was extracurricular. So our first accelerator ran at the beginning of 2014. One of my students, actually, Leon Worsley, had called me up and said the University of Sydney Student Union, it was a student body who'd done it, not the university itself, but the student union, are running this program called Incubate. Why isn't Bond? And Incubate was a startup. It was an incubator. And incubators were just gaining some traction back in 2014. And University of Sydney, all kudos to James Alexander and the crew that started that from the University of Sydney Student Union. They started this process, and so I called James and I said, James, Baden here from Bond, you're doing awesome stuff, how can we be involved? And James was like, we're actually looking to try and spread away from the University of Sydney. We think this is really important and we want other universities to come on board. So we partnered up for our first, it wasn't called the Bond Business Accelerator back then, it was called Incubate, which is the University of Sydney Union's branding. And we ran that. We put out a call for initially for Bond students. Yeah, just students. And we said, all right, we're going to start this startup thing. It's completely outside of uni. You have to do it on top of your normal studies. Google for Entrepreneurs had funded half of it through University of Sydney Union, and the faculty, my dean at the time, Professor Mark Hurst, had put 20 grand in behind it. We funded the program. It ran 6 startups. We put our call out. We had 87 people put their hand up and say, I want to be involved. We shortlisted that down to 12. We interviewed all 12. We ended up with 6, and we ran 6 through this, our first accelerator, at the beginning of 2014, and it was just unreal. And circumstance often happens, It just so happened that the demo day for that particular accelerator was down at Google's headquarters in Sydney. And so we took our students down, and at that time, the Dean, Mark Hurst, was actually in Sydney for some other activities. And I said, Mark, why don't you come over and have a bit of a look? And he came and he saw some of the pictures and what was happening at Google, and he was like, this is amazing, And so he was one of our early champions, because this was not a revenue generating item for the university. Matter of fact, it was a cost, right? So this was a financial outlay that didn't result directly in student enrollments, right? There's no direct correlation. And the Dean said, I don't care what you do, just do it again and make it bigger. You know?
Nice.
So sometimes with early stage business, you need that champion sitting across.
Yeah.
And my faculty business director, Makaran Parulka, and Professor Mark Hurst, the dean, were really strong champions. So that was started in 2014, 6 teams, magic. But our history is really strong in this space. So all the way back to 1991, we've been doing one-on-one coaching for business startups for our students, and we did it in this thing called Moot Corp back in the day, which was started off as an academic business planning competition. Write a business plan for a business and see where it worked, and it was an academic endeavour. But by the time the mid-90s came around, it became real, and Bond is actually a 3-time international champion. It's held out of the University of Texas at Austin. From all over the world, university students compete, and with 3 times we've been international champions at that. We've been building entrepreneurs since the very inception of this university back in 1989. So the accelerator was really just the next version. We've been doing it one-on-one to individual groups of students, and now we're able to do it to 6 students, or 6 teams of students. So we ran it again at the end of 2014. By that stage, I was like, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it well. So I'd used some funds out of a teaching award that I'd won to fund myself over to go to Stanford to the Lean Launchpad Educators course. So I learnt how to run an incubator, in an accelerator.
Yeah,
from there, I went over to Northeastern University where my mentor, Justin Craig, was, and he put me in touch with the people that were running the accelerated courses at Northeastern, and I went to Cambridge Innovation Centre. All that sort of stuff happened after the first one. We brought that back and we parlayed it into BBA, the Bond Business Accelerator, which operated from September through December in 2014. Importantly, we partnered up and we ran a sister program between the City of Gold Coast's funded accelerator called SURF, which was run by Aaron Birkby back in the old Silicon Lakes days. So Aaron was, I guess, one of the co-founders of Silicon Lakes. They won a tender from the City of Gold Coast, who funded an accelerator, 6 teams that ran through it. And we, again, a great comment on the role of universities and the importance of engagement with industry. So we ran those 2 programs side by side, the SURF Accelerator, which stands for Startup Really Fast, which only ran once, unfortunately, but it ran and it was awesome. And us, the Baden Business Accelerator. And when Aaron and I were talking about it, he really appreciated like the education component that we brought in, the method, the process, and Aaron's just unbelievably awesome. We really appreciated his connections into industry and the mentors and the practical reality that he brought. He's a 13 or 14-time startup entrepreneur. Just that relevance. So those 2 programs ran side by side. It ended up with the inaugural Gold Coast Demo Day, which ran in November of 2014, which to my mind still stands out as one of those amazing events. We had maybe 200 odd people that came and listened to 12 amazing pitches. We had a networking event afternoon that our events team here at Bond had just put on an amazing display. It was a magic night, and it brought the Gold Coast startup community together. Up until then, things have been going along. There's been Founders Forum that had been doing little bits and pieces, and the rest of it was kind of just who knew who. Silicon Lakes have been doing a little meetup thing, but no, and that brought everybody together, and the night was just amazing. So that was our second one. After that, we actually converted the Bond Business Accelerator into a 4-credit course. So it now is something that you can study here at Bond. Students that are doing the Bachelor of Business can do it as part of their degree. It counts towards your Bachelor of Business degree if you're doing a major in entrepreneurship. Or if you've got an elective, you can just take it as an elective and it counts towards your degree. So that ran in the middle of 2015, and we're just at tomorrow is demo day for BBA 4. So in our 4 versions of it, we've had 19, 12, 31. We've had 43 startups go through it. Of those, a mixture of undergraduate and postgraduate students. Importantly, this comes back to your question before, who can get involved, and we've had alumni come back in. We've had 5 alumni people come back and enrol in the course just to go through the process, and we've had 3 community members, people that aren't typically part of the Bond community, coming in, enrolling in the in the course, and going through the process. So the answer to the question, who can be involved? Anybody can be involved. The difference between the Bond Business Accelerator and any of the other accelerators you can go to, like the Murray Accelerator run by River City Labs, or going down into Sydney and going into any like the StartMate, is twofold. One, you actually have to pay for a course here at Bond. It's $4,500 or whatever it is. So you pay to be in the accelerator. In the other courses, you get funded. There's no payment. Right. So typically you get funded. River City Labs one I think is up to $50,000, right? Here we're completely hands off. We don't take any equity. Our business is capacity building. We're in the human capital business. We're not in the startup business. If you go to StartMate at 7%, if you go to River City Labs at 7%, like you give up equity. So we've got a different offering, right? The Bond Business Accelerator is a different offering to the traditional accelerator. Most accelerators you go into are a percentage of your company for an equity injection and then mentor. Our process is virtually indistinguishable from what you'll get at River City Labs or down at StartMate. They're the same, mentor heavy, experiential, bootcamp oriented, so very practical, but the difference is that our desired outcomes are human capital. We want to build better entrepreneurs, and we're less concerned with the viability of the business it's running through. We'd much prefer to get someone in here whose idea isn't all that great and run them through the process to build their skills and get them out at the other end, and they say, so that the next time they're in, they can be better at what they're doing. And it might be their third business where things go really well. So our demo days are a little different to a River City Labs demo day, where you listen to those pitches and you're like, fantastic, like the Punter Boys, like just great little business model, and you're like, I want to be in behind that. There'll be a few businesses that run through the accelerator, you're like, that's got some legs, and there'll be some you're like, I'm not sure that business is going to go anywhere, but wasn't that a fantastic pitch? And so our job is to champion and celebrate the skills that are coming out of the accelerator, and that's unashamedly, that's who we are. We are a human capital building exercise. And so the brand, I've been thinking about the branding, the Bond Business Accelerator. We're not a pure accelerator, and I'm cautious to distinguish ourselves from a traditional accelerator. It'd be nice if we could come up with some different word for what we are, but there isn't really something for what we are. We are an accelerator. There is money at the end. It's a $5,000 prize, right? No strings attached, $5,000, right? But we're not a traditional accelerator.
Do you find a lot of the students that come in, do many of them team up? Like, what happens in that ecosystem?
And as with all startups, so some of them, in our latest one, we had a team that came in, there were 3 of them that then split about week 4 or 5 into a person that's doing their own idea and then 2 of them doing another idea, right? That's the startup process. That's normal, right? So it's a collaborative, collective, morphing experience, right? And then we have interns that are running through. So the flow-on effects for campus are wonderful. We've got little businesses that are going. We've got people that are in the Faculty of Society Design that are doing advertising stuff. They're coming in, they're getting internship work. Well, it's not really internship. It's work experience. They're getting to work on a real business and doing stuff and creating designs and putting up, so it's a real connecting thing across campus.
The vibe must be electric.
It's awesome.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to the demo day tomorrow night. I'm really excited for that. Bet you are too.
Lots of work to go between now and then.
Sorry, we'll try not to hold you up. You got some work to do. So I mean, we're sitting also in the co-working space here at Bond. You named the hub, and Bond University was recently named the Gold Coast Regional Hot Desk Q host as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about Hot Desk Q and what is that and who can use that?
Yeah.
So who can use this space and who can use Hot Desk Q?
Yeah, so Hot Desk is a Queensland state government program, part of their Advanced Queensland funding, $405 million of it. Magical stuff, Queensland government, right? That is targeted, and they've got a whole bunch of different programs, right? Hot Desk is targeted to bring remotely located startups to Queensland to locate. So there's, I think, 10 or 13 Hot Desk sites around Queensland. Toowoomba, us here on the Gold Coast, we're the only one on the coast. Several in Brisbane, including River City Labs and up at Cairns. There's a bunch of different sites, and what the government is offering is they're offering up to $100,000 in funding, grant funding, no strings attached, to the startups to relocate here to Queensland, and then a site in which to house yourself. So if you're a startup from overseas and you want to locate on the Gold Coast, Bond University is a space. This is your environment, but it's more than that. It's this is our creative, flexible co-working space, effectively. But we've got film and television studios. We've got research labs in the health science medicine. We've got this beautiful sports facility you can use. So they get to locate themselves here, and for us, we get paid a modest little sum to cover the costs of them being here. But really, I really took that as an acknowledgement of Bonders on the map.
Yeah.
Like all the work we've been doing since 1991, really, but in the last couple of years has resulted in the broader community seeing Bond as a viable startup space that would be chosen to be part of the Hot Desk program. It was really, really awesome. I think they've landed their first Hot Desk thing. Time Looper is the first one that's going in, and I think it's going into to QUT create the creative CEA, the upper QUT. As far as I'm concerned, I don't really care where the startups go. I just want the Hot Desk program to be a success for foreign companies to locate themselves here in Queensland, build out our capacity, because as we were talking about before with our little community and spreading across campus, that will spread capacity across the Queensland community. Yeah.
Unreal. It almost seems like this has been part of some big grand plan, but how much of this actually just happened by accident?
Yeah, no, well, I think as with everything, we're just kind of making it up as we go, aren't we?
It's great. And it's great to see a university actually acting on entrepreneurship. It's very entrepreneurial what's actually happening here. I can see that opportunities and risks have been taken. With regards to the accelerator, a risk was taken. It was there was a cost, and then all of a sudden, look out, it's become a course. So I'm actually like almost speechless and grateful to see that's come about. I think that's fantastic for our community.
Yeah, awesome. And Bond's always had it built, by an entrepreneur in conjunction with a Japanese firm, right? Spirit of free enterprise. But it's also important to acknowledge that this is a system-wide approach that is happening. There's similarly good things happening at other universities. UQ's putting a big emphasis in, QUT the same, Griffith. One of my colleagues, Martin Bleemel, down at University of New South Wales, amazing guy, doing some great stuff into their curriculum. Josh Flannery at Innovations New South Wales, Melbourne Accelerator Program, University of Melbourne. The really awesome thing is that this is a system-wide approach, and if each of us is able to do the best that we can with what we've got and then share best practice, then the entire Australian ecosystem will benefit.
Absolutely. And of course, this, like we've been talking about Bond, of course we're sitting in Bond, you're from Bond, and this may seem like a Bond advert, but absolutely, it's all for the better of business and the local economy, Australian economy.
And that's what I see. I mean, there's every reason why Hunter over at Griffith and me should be collaborating on what is best, how we can best do stuff, right? that should be the case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on, you were part of the startup weekend that happened recently on the topic of health.
Yeah.
So where was that held? How did that come about, and who can get involved in that?
Yeah, so Startup Weekend is an international institution, like I'll say, that runs around the world in 160 different countries.
Yep.
You know, every year we run 2 of them here on the coast. One that happened in June, another one will happen in November during Global Entrepreneurship Week.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the desire of Startup Weekend is actually grassroots capacity building. So it's perfectly in tune with what we're trying to achieve here at Bond. And so we're putting support in to just get people together, build communities, get early stage little techniques happening. And effectively you turn up on a Friday night, if you've got an idea, you pitch it. The ideas can't be, they're pre-revenue ideas, they're early stage. Teams naturally form around, and we run those through for 54 hours Sunday night. They get pitched in front of a nice judging panel. Winners are awarded, backs are padded, and we go from there. So the one we ran in June was run out of Griffith University in the Red Zone.
Yep.
So I facilitated that along with Sharon Honeybell from Opmantech, great little Gold Coast-based tech company.
Absolutely, we know them well.
Yeah, Danny Marr's been in the news recently.
Yep.
With more Gold Coast, and Tanya Lippis and Linda Cardinale from Council.
Yep.
Important to acknowledge the work that Council does to support this as well, as a supporter, not as a provider, but as a supporter. So we put together the event. Some Bond students came and were the sort of the volunteers to help everyone go along, and I think we had, let's say, maybe 80 people turn up. Ran that through. We had effectively maybe 7 ideas that formed, maybe 9, and ended up with 7 pitched on the Sunday night. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Imagine they were just running on pure adrenaline by
Yeah.
the end of it.
And funnily enough, we were talking earlier about our red couches and how it's an active colour, right? The red zone at Griffith is everything is red. Like,
photos.
Right? Everything is red.
And your shirts were red and everything.
Our shirts were red. I had to get out of that place for a while just to, decompress. Which goes back to, that's a great space for active, engage, deliver. I think next time we probably will stay away from that for too long, and have different spots for people to
maybe
work.
wear white shirts and break up a bit.
So the next one's here at Bond in November.
Okay, great.
And
who should go?
Anybody, anyone who's got any interest. The people that I've been there have ranged in age from 9 to 65. Primary school kids to well-entrenched commercial people that are like, oh, what could I do on the side? To coders and tech people, to sales people, marketing people, design people.
What happens to the ideas afterwards? Like from the Sunday night, So they've formed a team.
Yeah.
They've effectively become a partnership.
So let me give you one little case study. I don't know how long ago it was. Let's call it last year. Startup Weekend last year there in Berkeley, facilitated out of Watso Workspace down here in Varsity. I was mentoring at that, and there was a team that came up that called themselves Genesis AR. You probably maybe heard, and they were effectively some high school kids and a couple of Bondies and David, who was kind of like an engineer, and they came up, and a couple of the students from Somerset College had some really awesome little tech where they were able to, got it in my wallet, but you're able to put a card on the ground and put your phone up to it, and it would create a bit like Pokemon Go, which is out now, right? But this is early last year. It created a 3D version of whatever the little monster was where I was on their card, right? And that particular business, they'd thought about it in the early days. They took it to Startup Weekend, they formed it, they put a whole bunch of structure behind it. That converted themselves into a business. Ryan and Lung and David and created that business. They got some early traction. They actually won Startup Weekend Gold Coast. They went into the regional finals. That's the beauty of Startup Weekend. There's actually the global startup battle that happens in November. Right. So it was November last year. There you go. There's the date. And they won the Asia Pacific regional final. They went into the international final and they became top 10.
Yeah.
They were like number 6 and number 7 worldwide in the startup battle, right? And then they decided, well, there's probably some legs in this. They ended up formalising themselves in an entity. They applied to Startup Chile's program. They got accepted into Startup Chile's program, which gives them some funding, and to stay and use that to encourage the city of Gold Coast to help them to stay here. So they're a business running, right? At the leading edge of some pretty cool tech. That's what can happen at a startup weekend. Also, sort of relationships happen.
Yeah, of course.
That's
big.
Commercial outcome, sure, but these people get to know one another. Council gets to interact. People get to see council as the supportive factor that it is, rather than just thinking, oh, there's a pothole on my road. No, there are all these other things that council are doing. Angus Rose is an amazing champion of business here on the coast. So all this other positive stuff that council bring to play, and how to be able to use that positively for commercial outcomes to drive, here's my little federal government role, jobs and growth, right? That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we have to thank Angus. He got our article recommended on More Gold Coast. So we had a little bit of a plug there, which is great.
Nice.
So, mate, a lot happening in your world. You said you've got a busy day ahead of you for tomorrow night's demo day. Anything else that we need to know? Like, is there anything else on the radar that you feel people need to know and they need to attend, or they need to?
So November, I'm going to say 17th, but it might be 16th. It's the Tuesday of Global Entrepreneurship Week is Gold Coast Demo Day. And Gold Coast Demo Day has morphed. It started off with the Surf Accelerator and the Bond Business Accelerator, and it's morphed now into a showcase of the different ways that entrepreneurs are being trained on the Gold Coast. So it's a showcase of all the different programs and the startups that are running through those programs. So we have Club Kidpreneur, and we get some little primary school kids out and they show what they're selling, right? And Startup Apprentice Sam and Sharon and Nicole Gibson, that's now in as the CEO of that organisation, and what they're doing at the high school level, and then Kayleen Langford from Startup Creative and what she's up to, and then if Aaron will be on board again, bringing the River City Labs team down and showing, well, here's a commercial accelerator. We get one or two of our little startups say, here's what's happening at university. And so it's a great way to see the different layers in the education space, and to really do some cheerleading for what's happening on building the entrepreneurs of tomorrow in the different ways it's happening here on the Gold Coast. So look out for that third week of November.
We'll find a link and we'll put it in the show notes for sure.
There you go. Awesome.
Excellent. And mate, so what's your favourite social media channel that you use so that people can stay up to date? Now, I'm sure we haven't thought of everything that's going on, but how do they follow you on social media?
Depending on what space you're in, you can either LinkedIn me. So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram.
Great.
My Facebook is private. That's the one I'm keeping private.
Well, you've got to keep some things private.
I've toyed with having a public Facebook thing, but I don't know. Anyway, so Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and given my name, it's there's only one of me. And
you're also blogging, I understand.
Yeah, I do. I've got badenuren.com, which is, I don't know. You know why I created that site?
Why?
Because I had some students saying, I don't know how to build a website. It's really hard. And this was last year, last year's BBA. How do you build a website? And I was like, well, come on, let's just do one. So I just built one, right? I write a bunch of articles, and I chuck them onto the media section on badenuren.com.
In your spare time.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for your time, Baden. I've really appreciated it, and I'm so excited for the future of entrepreneurship, and especially here on the Gold Coast, and collaboration with the unis. I think, there's definitely an awesome ecosystem that's been built here already, and it's just a matter of letting everybody know that this is available to them, I think. So hopefully that's our role.
Awesome, Chris. Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Excellent, mate.